say, Danny, we are extremely excited and honored to have you on our maiden voyage for the Staying Up Show. Something Brent and I have been working on for, this idea, we've been working on it for probably about a year now. We've been talking about doing this, and we finally got the time to put it all together. And I reached out to you, and we are honored and grateful that you agreed to be on this show. So again, my name is Aaron Sheridan. We spoke a few times on TikTok, and you agreed to do this show. So, I think you know a little bit about me. Heart failure survivor, changed my life. I'm doing much better than I ever have in my entire life. I'm also a very experienced psychonaut. So that's why I'm extremely interested in this topic. And I'm also joined by Brent Gomez.
My name is Brent Gomez, Danny. Pleasure to meet you, and thank you for joining us. I'm an engineer with less experience as a psychonaut, but we did come across your work. Aaron actually introduced me to your work and said he had had conversations with you prior. In addition to that, we also saw the Danny Jones podcast, and we thought you'd be a fascinating guest. So thanks for joining us here today.
Yeah. And then we're also joined by my little brother, Shane Sheridan, who's a clinical psychologist. Well, he's has a master's in psychology. He runs a hospital in North Carolina. Shane, you want to introduce yourself?
Nice to meet you. Hey, Danny. I'm Shane. I'm Aaron's little brother. We have been on many journeys together over my entire life.
Wow.
And they've all just been fantastic. And Brent, I'd sent Aaron your video with the Danny Jones show, and then I'd watched it, and it just blew my mind. I started writing down questions instantly in my phone. I started messaging Aaron. I'm so happy to have you here also. I'm so happy that my brother and Brent have included me in this. And I'm just looking forward to hearing some stories and asking some questions. I'm in North Carolina. You guys are all fun West Coasters, so I'm over here on the East Coast, but I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
It's an honor to be here, and it's an honor to know that you've been following my work. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And Shane, nice to meet you.
Nice.
I've been in North Carolina recently.
Oh, really?
It's really nice, yeah.
It is beautiful. Yeah, we're in Charlotte. It's gorgeous.
So, yeah. Oh, Charlotte, yeah. I was Chase Hughes. I was visiting him, and he lives, I forget what it's called, but somewhere in the middle of nowhere.
There's a lot of that in North Carolina.
First of all, I've been doing the Spirit Molecule for about 10 years. I've had well over 1,000 launches myself, multiple times per day for many years. My wife and I.
Fellow
Yeah, so I'm definitely a frequent flyer. I just want to, what kind of started you off in this direction?
Wait, so before we dive into that, I am interested. You said you tried the experiment. Did you get to see the code and everything, or were you one of these people that had a hard time, or?
I had a hard time.
Okay. And so you tried multiple times and you didn't succeed, or?
I've tried twice with my wife. We tried. I think it was my technique or the laser. I think I need to.
So I just put out like a very short, because Irv, the guy who's building the laser, is like, dude, you gotta help people like troubleshoot because with the people that are having a hard time. So I recorded like a super quick. It's like just literally me grabbing the phone and like showing some stuff. So even though it seems like all over the place, there's some advice there that I think it might help.
Yeah.
Thing I would say, and I'm mentioning it in the video, don't think that you're doing anything wrong.
Okay.
Some people just takes them a second. I don't know why that is. And on the one hand, it sounds like it might kind of like be tempering with the validity of the claim, but it really doesn't. So because the second you see it, immediately your brain goes, oh,
Yeah.
okay, like it's real. Like there's no question about it, right?
Yep.
So I'm not worried about that. Just stay with it. You will see it. One of the biggest things is try and play with the distance from the laser. There's no magical ability involved. There's no looking through the third eye, special visualization skills. It's none of that. Okay, it's super straight, very straightforward, very simple. It's just there. I think my suspicion it has something to do with exactly how people cast their attention. I think it has something to do with that. And then basically finding that. So all of these things that are suggested on the website, like the magic eye, kind of relaxing your gaze kind of thing, playing with the distances with you, all of these are just suggestions to kind of help you triangulate it, but they're not required. It's not like if you can't see the magic eye, you can't see this. It doesn't work like that. So just if you were sitting very close, try to go a little further. I had a woman here sitting for 2 hours, couldn't see it for like 2 hours, looking really close, and then she stepped back for like 2 seconds. Not related. She just stepped back for a second, like 2 feet away, and then she turned back and she goes, "Oh," and then she just saw it. So don't stress it, don't strain it, don't make it into like, oh, I gotta see it kind of thing. Just relax, enjoy the ride. You will see it. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
And one more thing that my wife now tells me to always emphasize with people, it is in the beginning, it is much smaller than you expect it to be. So
Okay.
it's almost microscopic in the beginning. Like sometimes people see, I see these like little windmills or like something. Yes, just keep looking closer. You will start seeing it very distinctly. And when you will start also seeing larger structures. But
Yeah.
first look for something very small, almost like the pixels that make up the space. But we can talk about it more. But I just want you to know it's usually nothing that you're doing wrong. So
That's helpful. That's good to know because
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean I assumed I was doing something wrong, but maybe I just didn't give it enough time, right? And my method was simply shining the laser sideways against the wall to get the diffracted to get the light off of the wall, and then putting my face close to the edge of the wall so I could
Yep.
see just the beam of the light. Right? That's what I was
Yep.
trying to do. Sounds like I'm still doing the right thing there, but I just probably need to.
The only thing you want to be looking beyond the surface. That's why I'm saying to people in the beginning to come closer because it forces you to look into the wall versus at the wall.
Gotcha.
But if you can look into the wall by sitting back, sometimes it's even easier. Just look like the laser is like a window kind of, and then you're looking in. So where you see the speckle, that's where you want to be looking.
Okay. Well, we'll try for sure. So we will definitely be trying.
Danny, is there a certain wavelength of laser that you should be using for the experiment, or will red laser do?
650 helps because it's lowest frequency, so you can spend more time with it. You can use all frequencies. It's just that with higher frequencies, you might start feeling a headache, and it is interesting because there's added content in some of them. So like when you try the green and the blue, with the green you have in addition to the code, you also see these weird arrows. And with the blue, you see a lot of different entities, a lot more than the other frequencies. They kind of come in and kind of look at it. It's very interesting.
That's maybe a good segue, Danny. One of the points we were hoping to talk about today were DMT entities. It's a fascinating topic. People often have very similar experiences. People report very often seeing DMT elves, a very common entity. I think Aaron has a lot of experience with sort of like an insect-like entity, which is
They're the management company.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what my wife is saying. My wife thinks it's like the creator of all things, she calls it, right? But I see it as soon as every time, hands down, anytime.
Yep. They're the layer right above us. They're the one that basically simulating us.
And they conform to the same geometry in the room. And if I stick my arm up, I can move it. I can move it slightly with my arm, and it's very interesting. So I tried some things. I did my own experiments. Like my wife said, Aaron, you shouldn't be doing this. But I grabbed my taser, and I wanted to see how it reacted. I tried tasing it, right? It didn't react. But then when I tried a torch, it did actually go up and kind of move away. So I'm like, that's very interesting. Is this
Try
just
a magnet? Try a magnet.
a magnet also?
They react to magnets. It's very interesting.
Interesting. Because I tried one of these things too. So this is this way my mind works. As soon as I see something like that, interact with it, right? So, but yeah, that's the type of stuff I do, man. So I'm glad you see it too. And I actually, when I look, you can see the thorax of a giant insect. It appears to be to me. Do you see the same thing? Do you see something similar?
Yeah, when you go to the hide, you see basically a lot of them, or if you stay in your space and they come into your space, there's a lot of different kinds. But these insectoids are, without a doubt, they are the ones weaving our 3D space, our physical reality. Yeah. There's no question about it.
So, Danny,
but the what? Sorry, go ahead.
Feel the insects are part of the management company?
They are the management company.
They are the management company.
Yeah, they are the layer right above us, and there's layers that are adjacent to them, but our universe is controlled by them, and then they have different facets, different ways of doing things, but as a whole, they are a hive mind, but they also have the individuality kind of like detached from the hive mind, depending on the function or what they're trying to do. But they're very real. They are. I believe that they are dark matter. I believe that the galaxy is their city, or galaxies are their cities. Is basically their world is. That's why it kind of looks like a web, like the
webbing. Yes, and it hangs off things
I've
too.
seen the web.
Sometimes when you come back, all of a sudden it's draped over everything. I've seen that before too. As you're re-entering, right? It's like draping off of everything in the room, including yourself, right? And I've seen the floating consoles, like the floating TV screens and all
Oh,
crazy.
you have. That's very
Yeah,
interesting.
absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, and
One
they
time,
have this like when you go in and it has that very mechanical click where it goes like the
oh yes, dude,
yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
it's like this, yeah.
Have you also heard that we're like this? You ever looked at like a ceiling fan and it's like bling bling? It's like making a noise almost like, and
Yep.
and and things will jump in and out of the room real fast too. Like it like will take them off.
That one is if I'm not hold on, let me turn off the AC because it makes a lot of
I love this. This is so
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
Aaron, you've been talking about the insectoids for years.
I know. Since
Years.
yeah, exactly. People think I'm crazy.
I love
No, I never thought you were.
the management company. I love that. I love that. Name. It's super cool. Yeah.
the one that jumps in and out of the room, if I'm not mistaken, that energy that you feel are you talking about the one that kind of like very erratic moving goes like tick, 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 tick,
Yes, like yes, like things coming
yeah,
in.
that is not the insectoids. That
No,
from
that's
what
not. I know it's something different, right?
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That is, I guess, from what I gather from other people, and all I can do is compare. I guess it's what would others would refer to as a machine elf.
The
Maybe.
bells, right?
And
Yeah,
that bling noise, bling
sorry,
bling
go
noise
ahead. Sorry.
I hear too. It's like a bling bling noise. I hear like a bling bling noise, kind of
Yeah,
like a
yeah,
little.
and that's because that's the jester. It's a
Yeah,
jester, and I
I
think it's the
yes, I
bells. So the jesters are, so from what I understand so far, the jesters are level free, so they don't have a level. They
uh,
exist across all the levels.
yep,
Each one of them is its own civilization, so
yep,
they're completely untethered by any. I think there are some basic rules they have to abide by, like from
yep,
the source, but they don't have to abide by anyone else's rule. That's their function. They're kind
yep,
of like the wild card. They can do whatever they want. They can jump between all the levels. They're very powerful. I don't know
yep,
if you noticed that, but everybody kind of like stands
yeah,
still when they appear. They're like everybody kind of like don't move, right? They're from what I understand, they are the fastest thing in existence. So they can move faster than anything else in existence. That's why you can never be ahead of them in anything, not in thought, not in ideas, not in location, not in time. They will always be there before you. And and the reason that they're important is because they are the almost like the Joker, like they're the wild card of the universe. They're the surprise packet that surprises existence itself. So it's almost like they are allowing some kind of an unfoldment that is surprising the universe or all the universes. So it's almost like the most unpredictable factor
yep,
of existence. Everything has a price, from what I understand. They occupy a very strange state inside where they occupy the yin and the yang all at once. So they're not dark or light. That's why it's very difficult to understand what they are because they're very, sometimes people say, oh, they're like malicious or something. From what I understand, they're not. They're just everything. So they can make a joke at you and then they'll be like, hmm, yes or no? I don't know. And then it almost sounds mean. It's almost like, well, I can just demolish you right now. Will I?
yes.
I don't know. Hmm. Interesting. So it's almost like you never know what I'm going to do. Why? Because I don't know what I'm going to do. So it's
right.
almost this like crazy, like demented kind of thing. But then we think of it as from a human parochial perspective, we might think of it as evil, but it isn't. And the reason that that's important is because the only way to occupy an understanding of what's possible is to have an experience of that thing that is possible. So somebody has to be experiencing this ultimate omega connection that suffering and bliss are the same and in the kind of the ultimate point because the source is not experiencing it, the source is everything, right? And when you're everything, you don't have an experience of that, you're just everything, it's the structure. So they are the closest thing to, before you get to like levels of like God Almighty's, they're the closest level of that,
Yeah,
which is weird because they're anything but they're not what you would expect a divine being to be, right? They're very they're boasting all the time. They're like, look at me, I can do this. Like they're very vain, right? But they don't have to answer to anything, so they can afford that. But at the same time, they are playing this role in reality in which they have to experience all the time this kind of very, very intense point of omega where everything is one thing, and it's actually a very difficult state to occupy. But that's why somebody has to be able to experience the dark and the light all at once, and that's basically what I understand they're doing in reality, and that's why they don't have to answer to anyone because they have
Yeah.
this dimension. Yeah.
That makes sense. Interesting. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I definitely have heard, I've been taunted before by these things, right? It's
One quick thing. Sorry, I'm cutting you off.
no, go ahead.
Thing to try, and this is a really good for anybody who ever gets stuck with this. Like it seems like when they do this thing, because how they go about it, it seems like they don't care. So nobody ever thinks of that. But you can ask them. You can say, hey, that's too much for me.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, oh, sorry, I didn't realize. They will just stop.
I've actually spoken to one. I've had a weird booming voice actually that I heard before, and funny enough, it was like a woman's voice, and it was strange. It was telling me that it was gonna protect me, and it sounded almost Rastafarian, which is hilarious and sounds crazy. But she was like, "Don't worry, Aaron, I'm going to protect you," and I was like, "This is super strange."
That is really funny.
Some really dark stuff too. I've had like things happening on the outside of the walls, and you hear like growling and monsters and stuff.
Oh, they exist. Yep, for sure.
Yeah, it basically turned me into an ogre where I have one eye up here, one eye down here, skinny arms, bumps all over my arms. It's turned me into a bloated thing with like cuts all over myself as well too.
So there's this demonic species.
Yeah.
Oh, species.
And they're on the same level as the insects, but they're adjacent to them. I don't know what I mean, they're important too. That there's a reason why everything is kind of balanced and everything is allowed to exist. But yeah, there's definitely a demonic dimension where
for sure, I've experienced it.
That's so interesting.
And my wife's actually seen me look like Hellboy in the show with dark skin. She's also seen me missing a face where I'm just a hole for my face, which was interesting too. So
yeah. And their tendency is to convince you that there's no one else but you and them in existence. It's like they lock you in with them. Those can be intense. They one time overlaid my my fiance's face with this like it was her, but it was like a demented her, and it kept on playing on that, and I was like, what is going on? And it basically was playing on me. It was trying to incite me to not trust her because it was doing this weird thing. Yeah.
One time I did it well. So I mean, have you had some that are like so crazy that you've seen people completely lose control of like their functions? I mean, I know I have. I've seen a buddy one time sitting across from me. I made this contraption, which so he could take a whole bunch at once. It was probably not the smartest thing to do, right? But he took this
honest thing to do.
He took this sized hit, right? And I'm like, John, take it easy. I shouldn't say his name, but now it's out there. and he gets real quiet. He sits down. He's sitting across from me, and this is a true story. And he's wearing shorts. And all of a sudden, I see this dark spot in the front of his shorts. I'm like, John, what are you doing, bud? And next thing you know, he's full stream urinating on my couch across from me. And it was terrible. It was an embarrassing experience. My wife came in the room. She said, what's going on? But he said he heard a large screeching noise. And he said there's these faces all yelling at him. He couldn't hear anything. And then when he started to stand up, put his hands on his hips, I'm like, John, if you take a shit on my couch, bro, it's gonna be on, man.
It also
I made him take the chair home with him. But
it almost feels like they can punish you if you maybe don't respect the spirit molecule. Maybe
it has nothing to do with it.
It's just random, right?
Nothing to do with it. They will do that no matter what, because that's what they do, right? And they're not there to punish you. And there's no one that can control what you're allowed or not allowed to do. So that is a universal law that what we call free will, which doesn't actually exist, but your perception of free will. Hold on.
Yep, no problem.
This is fascinating too.
This is super interesting.
I'd also like to
meaning your perception of free will is impeccable. So it's not allowed to be touched. The only thing that anything in existence, no matter how powerful, the only thing they can do is try and convince you that they're in control. So they can entice you to act as if they're in control of you, but they cannot. So if you just detach yourself from that and you know that, you're completely safe. And this is a big lesson where they said they actually said this to my fiance once. They said, uh, everything is here. We can't protect you. You have to learn how to protect yourself. So there's some, some guides that can show up once in a while, but like everything is here and everything is allowed to be here. So when you enter this space, you need to know that to a large degree you're on your own. And this is actually kind of, it's a big lesson. It's like a, I guess, lesson in responsibility that when you enter these spaces, as from the more psychonaut perspective, we're more kind of like free agents, right? We don't necessarily answer to all these shamanic practices, and like we're just like, let's go, whatever, right? So this renegade kind of attitude, it's good for some things because we would definitely experience the more actually true nature of the thing, which a lot of people in spiritual communities would obviously appreciate less. But it is true. Like we see what it really is, right? Which is all of these whatever the nature of it is, we just accept it for what it is because we come from a more secular perspective usually. When you come the plus that you get when you do it in a more ceremonial way, in a traditional way where, thousands of years of practices that kind of riding around these containers, the plus you get is that you are more protected because you're on this container where of like there's certain energetic walls that are erected over so many years that there's already like a structure that everybody kind of respects to a certain degree. The
Sure.
the negative side is that, or I don't know if you want to call it negative, but the downside is you will always be seeing seeing it through that lens. So you actually wouldn't be seeing the real thing, which is also, I don't know if you ever had this experience when somebody is very spiritual and they're a little curious and they would try DMT, let's say, and they would go like, "Whoa, what? Like what?" Like they because it's like very mechanical. It's not like a spiritual thing. It's like a very technological thing, right? So to them, that imprint is jarring. It's like, what do you mean? Like, well, it is what it is, right? And that inability to accept that also has a limitation.
Yeah.
So you gotta kind of weigh in the things. I'm in the practice now when I'm showing to people certain things. I definitely borrow a lot from that other world, which is like creating a container, saying the right things, at least showing some respect and requesting that respect back. It's almost like you can't just jump in, or
Yeah.
I might not to now. Yeah.
Wim Hof, right? So you do the breathing method. Is that where you take?
Yeah, just because it resets the energy. Yeah.
That's one of the methods you use is a Wim Hof to kind of get things going.
Yeah, it resets the energy nicely for me, but I always say, hey, if this is not your cup of tea, either offer me something that you feel comfortable with. Sometimes you would want to say a prayer.
Mhm.
Or because whatever is the imprint of the person definitely influences whatever trajectory they're going to be on, right? So what you want to protect is their own sensibilities, and you want to protect their own container as they see it. So people have to kind of enter in a comfortable way. If somebody is comfortable in a certain kind of way, you want to give them that. So there's no, it's not like a competition, but it's like I think Wim Hof just in general is nice because it energizes you and it
Yeah.
resets the energy. And usually when I play this very particular clip of him speaking, he has a very positive energy. So his voice, his resonance, everything is very positive, and I think it brings the right kind of thing into the room.
Awesome.
Danny, do you feel that ayahuasca has its own container? You're referring to kind of an experience, you refer to it as a container, but do you feel that ayahuasca itself kind of has like an energy that's been developed over thousands of years of use? When you were referring to that, I immediately thought of ayahuasca maybe as a psychedelic that people have used for long periods of time that are often really related to like nature, that sort of thing.
Ayahuasca is definitely one of these substances that lends itself really nicely to these containers, both in terms of practice and also its trajectory. But the containers can be created in even around DMT. It doesn't really matter. Whatever energy you're working with, it has particular containers that would fit it more. Ayahuasca, yeah, because of the traditions around it. And also ayahuasca is much more of a human channel. It's
Yeah.
talking about humans.
Syrian rue, cappy vine, those two combined, right? They take those things, you make a tea out of them.
Yeah,
And
I
they,
just mean experientially. From a
Yeah.
first person perspective, it feels much more carnal, human.
Right.
It feels less crazy space aliens. Like it's less, right? So, and I think there's a reason for that. I think DMT is the main artery, and DMT and ayahuasca is almost like it's dialed into the human channel, so it's easier to digest a lot of these things. It's more easier to understand from somebody who's like more of Earth, that kind of thing. And overall, I think it is important, these containers, because they um well, here's what I kind of realized. If you have, very different species in existence, it's not always that easy to understand how you're going to be translating between the species, right? Even on Earth, we speak different languages. Sometimes it's very difficult. But the meme is, well, if you speak kind of like the language of love or the language of human, it's still easy to communicate even if you don't understand the words. And it's true to a degree, because there's certain things that are just fundamentally human. But the thing that is the most fundamental is action, right? If I show you action of some sort, I can show you what I'm doing, even if you don't speak my language. I can show you, hey, like even if we're stuck in some, I don't know, some movie scenario, we're stuck in some kind of a hut, and we don't speak the same language, and we have to cook something. Well, that's less of a problem because we're just doing it, and you're like, oh, okay, like I see what we're doing, okay, by the fact that we're doing it together. So the way that I see it, ceremony is that it's you showing by action. So you're basically showing, no matter what language the other species speaks or what kind of dimension, how many dimensions are made out of, they see that whatever you are, what you're doing right now is you doing this thing. And the thing inside of you kind of looks a certain way, right? They also can see the imprint of your meaning tapestry. So if your meaning tapestry is all jittery and crazy, it's kind of hard to read you, and also it will attract certain things. But if you calm yourself down, if everybody's sitting together and doing the same thing, they'll be like, ah, we know what that is. Yeah, ceremony is universal, right? They're all doing this thing, whatever that is. They preparing for something, or they're trying to bring a certain state or an energetic, uh, uh, container to that space. These things are universal. So when you do them, the right kind of things are going to start paying attention to you. There's a much higher chance of everything kind of aligning and setting in place versus just, you know,
Yeah,
throw the rock and see where it lands. That's a different kind of thing.
that makes sense.
Danny, you're talking about ceremony and thought and action, and I was just thinking a little bit about the entities. And on my journeys, I've never gotten an entity. I've been broken down into a million pieces. I've been absorbed, or I should say, fit into the world around me. And I've come out from it just knowing that any hardships I've had are both beautiful, but also they don't really mean anything. But that's not a bad thing. And that's my experience this entire time. Whenever I've been on, I've truly never seen an entity, but I have seen my brother Aaron has pulled out a devil mask and put it on as I was coming out from my biggest journey. And right in front of my face, pulled the devil mask, and I opened my eyes and I just laughed because I could see right through the devil mask. Like it was
That
the
was
most.
old Aaron, by the way. I have never done that in well over a year. So.
But I'm just saying, like it never, like I experienced it, and I was just like, Aaron, like that's what's beautiful, that's wonderful. But I never saw an entity. But when you're referring to practices and what people do for ceremony, it makes me wonder what the entity's ceremony is. If there's a purpose, oftentimes I hear people say, I'm afraid of this, or I worry about that, or I fear this, or they're trying to do this. And I don't know if that's anything, but I do know that they are doing something. And is there a ceremony there that we think is going on?
If a ceremony was happening for a long time, like in the case of many shamanic traditions, then yeah, they figure it out. They're like, oh, they're doing that thing again. Okay, we know what that is. Okay, so now so it's a consistency thing, it's a intention thing, and yeah, I think over time, when you do it enough times, there's a recognition that that means something, and because they've been doing it for thousands of years, then there's a relationship with these other beings, and even if you don't speak the language, they can understand your ceremonial language. They can understand what
Yeah.
you do there. I think that's along the lines of where it is. The specificities you can come up with new ceremonies maybe, but I think the important thing is that you're putting front and center what you see, and then you leave the rest for whatever is happening. So it's almost like this authentic state, humility, and the understanding that, yeah, like you said, anything can happen, and you're kind of preparing yourself so you both it's an inner preparation for you, but also it's a preparation of the space outside. And where I do to some degree depart from the the more traditional way of looking at it is that I do think we need to, just like everything else, it is looking to advance. It is looking to grow. And these containers, they're important for the time that you're using them. But if you want to let things grow and our understanding needs to grow, then we need to let some of these stories go and accept new understandings about the space. And then maybe we can create ceremonies around that, which will maybe incorporate new elements that we've never incorporated before. But
Very interesting. Yep.
It's a really nice, it's a really wonderful concept and a great trajectory to move in, because one of the biggest questions I had with a background in psychology when watching your video was essentially, it's so difficult for someone who's grown up in a very structured society to understand that there could be a reality that doesn't contradict their own, but is different from their base understanding of why their reality exists. So in other words, their reality is fine, ours doesn't change. Pick up my mouse bag, drop it, it falls. But the reason that happens can be based in another reality completely without affecting us. So we may not know exactly what is. It might be a projection. It might be a dimensional issue. And just the thought of trying to understand those things makes me sweaty as a human. I'm like, what does this mean? Gravity exists, but if it is something else that's created it for a different purpose I cannot even perceive, what does that mean for me? And for somebody who's interested in that concept, I can at least explore it a little bit, but the majority of people I know are not interested because it is so fearful. It is so fear-inducing for no reason other than it's something new, even if it doesn't eliminate their current beliefs. And so I'm just always so confused on how to, or wondering on how we can help people kind of accept that their current beliefs are not contradicted, but there is more beyond that to explore without removing their sense of self and security, that security blanket, so to speak, that they carry with them at all times.
Talking about interdimensional stuff and religion and things like that. Is that what you're?
Yeah, because I don't think it contradicts religion. I don't think it contradicts science. I don't think it contradicts anything.
so the short answer is you don't always have to do that.
Yeah.
It's not for everybody. And there's a reason why certain people really want to always go and explore, and other people want to stay at home and tend to the garden.
Yeah,
There's different kinds of people.
Yeah.
And that I think that's really where it lies. Like if somebody is interested and they're coming to you and they're like, "Hey, can you tell me more?" Or "I want to explore, I want to understand," then you work. But now there's a reaching out. There's an attempt from
Yeah.
the other side to create models from the inside, and now you can help them build these models according to what they believe. Really cool story that I like. I have a good friend, Juliana Garces. She's an incredible artist. She last year she did a show with Alex Gray and Allison Gray, and she's an incredible psychedelic artist, which I highly recommend you guys check out. And she actually probably produces the stuff that I think is the closest to what I see in the space. She creates like these mixed media things that are very much influenced by the DMT space. And she has a beautiful story where her dad, who was a devout Christian, and he saw that she was coming up. She's pretty known at this point. So when he saw that she was coming up, for him, all of these things, psychedelics, all this, it's like the work of the devil, right? Like don't even come near it. But he trusted her enough, and he saw that there's something happening in her life that's very positive and beautiful. So he asked her one time. He said, "Hey, can you like tell me more? Can you explain?" And he was a diabetic, and he had a lot of issues with his health and his psychology and all of that stuff. And then she basically did it in the best way possible. She said, "Well," she's like, "Would you like to try some of this?" He's like, "Yeah, but like I really don't know how to go about it." So she's like, "Great, no problem." So they did a lot of prep. They did a lot of meditation. She's her and her husband, they're Vipassana practitioners. So they would sit down, they would meditate, and then eventually they brought him enough comfort where they're like, "Okay, how about what are the items that are the most important to you?" And he said, "Well, the Bible." It's like, "No problem." So they built a little shrine. They put the Bible in the center. That's your safe zone, right? Great. If the truth is coming through, it will come through in the way that the person is comfortable with, and it will be met with that understanding from the other side. I really believe that. So when you're doing all of these things, beings from the other end, they see all of that. They say, "Oh, I see what you're trying to do here," right? So let us help construct content that might be more palatable for that kind of a person.
That's
Then,
beautiful.
yeah, and then he did his thing, and he cured his diet. Like, he's no longer diabetic. He changed his entire diet. It was mushrooms, I think, in that case, and then the next day he tried DMT, and he literally just spun on a dime. Like,
So that's an example of their ceremony impacting his experience by the entities and the space, allowing it to be supportive in the way that he needed.
exactly.
Yeah, that's great. I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
That answers the question. Yeah, that was my number one thing, is how do we make people comfortable with being on?
You have to treat the space as if it's real, even if you don't accept that, because it is real. So I even say to people, I tell them always, like, look, because sometimes I do have to show it to people that are very kind of like, type A, no interest in any spirituality, even that at this point, in our day and age, it's almost rare because most people kind of like have some interaction with something spiritual, right? But I read the room. Like, if I see that somebody very, very secular and they don't care, or maybe like even militantly atheistic, whatever, I say, look, I know it might be silly to you. I understand. Just trust me on this. Whatever it is, even if you think it's all your psychology, this thing is a lot. I promise you. Okay. So entertain me, just hold it to your heart and speak to it like it's a real person. Say, hey, show me everything I'm ready to see. Please be gentle with me. Say that. You don't have to say it out loud so you don't feel silly, but say it in your heart. Say it. Okay. Talk to it like it's a person, because there are things that are paying attention to you in that space. So
That's fascinating, Danny. I think maybe I, more than Aaron and perhaps more than Shane, fall into that type A camp, where on the most recent blast off, I myself was questioning, is this more psychology? Is it interverse, or is this a physical or other dimensional realm that's outward, right? And I was having this chat with myself, trying to figure out what it was. I'm trying to map it, I suppose, but I didn't have a good feel for what it is. But it sounds like maybe you're leaning towards the camp that it's real, it's outward, perhaps. Is that the case?
I think it's dimensional, right? I mean, in my opinion, it's overlapping dimensions coexist, right?
Edge of the black hole
yeah,
projecting.
there's the first thing is to say is that I'm more like you guys, right? So like, I come from a much more perspective like that. It's just like, don't bore me with the nonsense. I just want to go in and yeah, I'm like, I've done all the crazy shit, right? I've K-holed myself on purpose and then smoked a gram all at once. So like, just to see what happens, right? And
Yeah.
then I mean, I was out for like 45 minutes. It was bananas. But
Yeah.
and then I came back and I was like, oh my God, okay, I want to go again, right? So I'm very high octane. I understand that mindset.
Yeah.
And to some degree, DMT likes that. It
Yeah.
likes if you're crazy. It goes like, oh, let's play, right? Because not everybody can handle it and it gets to express itself fully, right? On the other hand, there is this thing, there is this just simple fact that there's the bigger picture. And it's fun to play within the picture, but at the same time, respect and there's certain outcomes to certain trajectories, and they are what they are, right? I'm saying this because my transition was gradual, and it took me many years to accept what I've been shown over and over and over again. Like, every time they would show me, and they would be like it started with the frog guy, right? Where he's like, you get it? Like, you don't know how to do this. I'm telling you, I'm real. I'm giving you real information, right? So to listeners who don't know, the short version is that I had a frog dude appeared in my room and he showed me how to play chords on the guitar that I didn't know how to do. So then that was the first. Now, when I was in it, I knew that in that instance that nothing will ever be the same again. Because I was like, oh my God. Oh, this is real. He's like, yes, I'm real. And I was like I was just like, because before it was just like a crazy, amazing thing. And just like you, it was like, well, I don't know, psychology, and that's like, I don't care. It's amazing, right? But that's the instance where the first time it was like, no. We are real, like you. So I
This
was
is a
like, holy shit. Okay, so then from that point on, but then from that point on, it was years because every time I wasn't in it, I'd be like, yeah, but like you keep going back and forth because it's like it's a lot to adopt as an actual ontology. It takes some reframing. But then I would go in again, and they would, and this is where I did it for a year, just like you're saying you did. Like for a year, I was like, just going in every day, like multiple times a day. And every time I would go in, they would like pick up the conversation, show me new things, show me new worlds, show me like very real things, not esoteric. Like it was very real. They even showed me when other people fly into the space. They showed me what they do. They showed me like, here, you see, like people fly in. We can't be bothered all the time, so we have this system of these like
Yeah.
hose-like looking VR glasses, yeah, that come and like entertain the people until they're done with whatever they're doing, and then they go. And I'm like, oh, that makes perfect sense. That's why some of the experiences are so like whatever that is, and some experiences are very like you're just meeting beings. Is because when you don't have the goggles, you see the real space. That's different, right? So then I started understanding all of this mapping, and even then, every time I would go in, I'd be like, no, come on. And one time, it was they were almost not frustrated with me, but they were like, dude, what? How many times do we have to give you? So it's like, okay, they started going like super slow, my speed. They went, okay. I don't know if you heard me tell the story, but basically they go, okay. They kind of pulled me a little bit out of my head, very, very gently. They went like, "Mm," and I was like, whoa. And they go like, okay, you feel that? I'm like, yeah. They go, okay, now we're gonna go all the way out. You ready? And they're waiting for me to say I'm ready. I go, yeah. And they go, whoop, and they plucked me out of my body. And I'm seeing, like, I'm looking from the side, and I'm seeing this like extra layer that is like the sandbox. I see the real space that is and then the thing right in front of me, which is a replica of the real space. It's not the real space, but it's a replica of the real space. And it gives them enough of a buffer to amend things if they have to, if something happens that is really outside of the bounds of what needs to happen, right? Because you have free will, so you have this little sandbox that you're in all the time, which is like, I don't know how many instances it is, but it's where it's buffering before it uploads to the mainframe. So then you get to do your little dance in here, and then if everything is checks out, then it's exactly how you did it, translates to the mainframe, and it feeds the mainframe. Yes, that's what happened next in reality. If the second it's written in reality, there's no more taking it out. That's it. That's what it was. But that's why you have this little buffer, and they show me that space. And I always say it's the equivalent of putting like a really good iPad, and on top of the camera of the iPad, you put a really good iPhone, and now you're looking at the room. If let's say it's really close to you, you don't even know you're looking through two different devices. You think you're looking at the room, but that's exactly the same thing, right? So they showed me this, and then they said, okay, go to the living room. And I went to the living room, and then they said, okay, we're gonna ionize the air. And I was like, what does that mean? They go, they turned on the thing, and all my clothes, everything just went like sucked to my body. Like I physically felt it. I was like, and I looked, and like the light even bent. I was like, and I was like, they're like, we're real, real. Like, do you understand? We're real. And I was like, so it took me so long to fully get, okay, okay, I believe it. And only when they showed me that this is simulated, they showed me how they do it. Then I went over the hump. Then I was like, oh, okay. They're like, finally. Okay, now you understand. So then it was a very long process. That being said, the reason obviously nothing that insistent happens for no reason, right? So that there's a reason why I guess we need to know or to understand, or some of us need to know and understand, because something is requiring that. It's also why I think the code is visible at this point in history. I don't know if it was always visible, and I don't know if it will always be visible. I know that right now it's visible. So they basically made, all of these moves towards convincing me, and then I realized that there's a message here that is trying to come through because it's important. But all of that being said, I know that not everybody needs to fully know or adopt this, or it's few individuals to help guide a function. That's plenty. That's it. Like that's all it's required. So convincing everybody is not something I'm doing. I'm making the information available because it seems to be the right move, but I'm not pushing anybody. I'm not convincing anybody. If somebody's coming and they're doing the laser and they're doing the molecule first, I never remind them because I know the molecule will tell them. Some people just jump up and run to the laser. I'm like, yeah, that's a fuck yeah for you. Some people either forget it exists, or, and I don't think it's a coincidence, or they just, you see that there's like They don't want to know that, right?
Yeah.
So you don't push. You just
Yeah.
you just enjoy whatever you gotta enjoy. So to your point is, yes, I fully understand what you're saying, but to me that's not a it's not more like I'm leaning more towards thinking that. No, I know for sure. Like I know 100% certainty we are simulated. There's no question about that. But it does not mean we're puppets, and it's the simulation is only of the environment, not of outcomes. It's completely open-ended. So in that sense, there's really nothing different aside from the fact that under the laws of physics, I now know there's computation, which, by the way, is not a new idea. I just know that for a fact, right? So then I guess the newness here is that no one, including myself, I think ever thought that in our lifetime we're gonna have any interaction with it potentially like experimentally. I think maybe I postulate maybe in 2 million years from now we'll have some ability to interact with something like that, but like nothing of that kind. But really, the idea that computation is fundamental and the laws of physics riding on top of it dates all the way back to Wheeler, actually way back, and goes all the way to Plato's cave, right? That the reality is not what it seems, even in essence. So yeah, I'm absolutely convinced because of what I've been shown. I understand your position of kind of like having a hard time like fully adopting it. I think maybe the code is one of these things that to the people that are ready, after you'll see the code, you'll understand. It'll be like, oh, like this is for real, for real. I get it. There's like a very that's the reaction you see in the videos, right? Um, and the important part to always take on board, which is it's not necessarily the case that we have to convince everybody. It's just
Yep.
the people that are ready.
That's awesome. Yeah, that makes
That
sense. That's very cool.
A very great explanation.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. Actually, I'm on board with you, and I've had so many experiences. We don't even have enough time to discuss all of the crazy stuff that's occurred in my 1,000+ launches as well. That's some pretty similar stuff with interacting with certain beings, and I've tumbled through space end over end and had some really amazing stuff happen. My wife also sees these weird like characters on my skin. She sees them up and down my skin all the time. And another friend of mine also sees them on my skin. We're not sure what that means or why we see those, but it's interesting because people are seeing the same things. It's a vehicle. In my opinion, this is a vehicle. We're able to travel to perceive things that we normally would never see. And it's a blessing. It's amazing, man. It is. I am honored. This has been probably one of the most awesome conversations I've had.
I do want to know more about you seeing the screens or the console.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one time, and this was another time, I used that big apparatus where I would take these monstrosity-sized hit, and I took a monstrosity-sized hit, and all of a sudden, at first I blacked out. When I came to, there was these floating console screens, like computer screens, floating all around the room with me, and then what I thought was an insect-type creature, but it had my wife's face on it, was sitting here saying, "Aaron, it's me. I'm your wife. Aaron," and it's like moving crazy, right? And I'm like, "No, you're not my wife," right? And she comes to sit on me, right? She's like trying to tell me, "Aaron, calm down. It's me." I'm like, "No, you're not my wife, right? Get away from me," right? And she's like, "Aaron, please listen to my voice. I know it doesn't look like me, but it's me." And at the time, it was this pulsating female face with these tentacles coming off of it, and there were these computer screens floating all around me in this space, and it was like she was pulsating and glowing. And it was the most insane thing ever, moving like an insect at the same time. I knew it was her. I'm like, okay. And then as I came back down, things started to come back together. And the stuff was veiled off of everything in the room. There was like a netting veiled off of everything in the room. And then she was traumatized because I scared her. Because I was like, I screamed at the time. I actually screamed. I said, "Help!" So loud the neighbors must have heard it. So it's not one of my finer moments, but at that time I did see the screens floating. I thought my wife was an insect creature, and my son door. He's older. He's by the way, he's in his 20s. So it's not.
Yeah, he's an adult. Yeah,
my 4-year-old son was.
Yeah, I got two sons. One's 27 and one's 25.
That's crazy. How old are you?
I'm 47. So.
Oh wow, that's amazing. Yeah. You look incredible for 47.
I've
recently met a guy who I don't know if he wants to be named at the moment, but he's a scientist. And he told me that he recently started getting like a very, very direct communication. And I'm not gonna get into the full details of the story, but for the sake of this story, just accept that I have every reason to believe everything he's saying is correct.
Yeah,
And he explained that what they explained to him is that these simulations, they're basically ways of them expressing like the form of like the deeper meaning of whatever is happening behind the form. And some beings on a certain level can interact with that meaning directly, and others have to have the form still to like we're one of them, right? And they are right on the cusp of being able to be non-formless, and then most of it also has to be form. But some beings on a certain level, they're just completely formless. And they can
yeah,
take forms, but they really don't need that at all anymore. So he explained that these simulations that we're in, this layer, we have all these different kinds, and we are here on Earth, which to me sounded a little arbitrary because it's a little bit, it just sounds like a Rick and Morty episode. But he said, no, that's actually what's happening. Like Earth is more like a central train station. So we're not all from the same place. We actually all have representations in these higher spaces, and some of us are different things. He said, they told me I'm one of them, the insects. And he
uh,
said, because of that, now my channel with them is open all the time. So I don't need to smoke anything. I
yeah.
can just see them. I can I know, he said, I know it sounds insane, but yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, 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 go.
I was just saying that I see that the manager you speak of, this thing that comes into the room, I can at times, even when I'm not ingesting, I can still see this thing in the air, which is amazing to me also. So
That's incredible. I never achieved that. I can see the console 100% of the time, but it's only when I'm on the molecule. I can take one puff and it will just form right in front of me. It's kind of crazy. But
that's
yeah, so you might also be one of the insectoids. The only thing I can say, the only time I've had the experience of being something else, so I don't know if that means I am one, but that's the only time I've experienced something else, being something else, because I know people report this, but I've never had that aside that one time. And I felt all of a sudden I felt my mouth like doing this clicky thing, and I could understand the clicks like in different language, and it was like a very distinct smell to this, not DMT smell, it was like a very distinct odor. And I was like, oh, and like I felt like I was one of these like amphibian lizards. So like I think if anything, like my assumption is maybe I'm one of them. I don't know what they are because I don't interact with them a lot. But my fiance also experienced a similar thing, and she said, I saw that both you and I are these reptilians. So that might be interesting. And then the other ones that I did meet a few times that really like blew my mind are I now that I'm interacting more with kind of like people in the spiritual space too, they keep telling me, oh, they're the what are they? Probably you guys would know. I forget now. They're the blues, bird-like, like the tall blue. You know what I'm talking about?
tall blue, they're alien type things. Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
yeah. There's a name. Like the spiritual people have a name for them. But
Aliens or something, or like I
it
said,
doesn't matter. They have a name for them. Like they're a known species. So because I don't go by other people's stories or definitions, I only go by what I'm experiencing. So I can just tell you that they really look like they're tall, very blue, like deep, deep indigo blue. And some of them look a little bit bird-like, but not all of them. Some of them just have helmets, but they're kind of like the custodians of knowledge. They're very noble, and they have this like, what you imagine in a like in a sci-fi film to be kind of like these like very noble beings, and
A Pleiadian?
maybe yeah, and they're kind of like they hover, and whenever they appear, I feel the whole room. You can feel almost like a fizzle in your skin. It's almost like a very gentle, and I don't hear the actual sound, but it's almost like it would be accompanied by like music, you know what I mean? By like, oh, like that kind of thing. And whenever they come in, it's like but that big transitions happening when they appear. It's like they're kind of like guiding this very, very big process. These are the only other ones that I see relatively on a normal basis than the insectoids.
They almost sound like the yin and yang to the demonic realm. Um,
Maybe. I think there's like
More
a
harmonic, less.
right. Yeah, I just feel that the demonic ones, they're more on the level of the insectoids and Pleiadians, you said?
That's what I pulled up, and they look like they're blue or with blue gowns glowing, and always they're either here or here, and they're presenting knowledge and peace for the most part.
So let's see. Blue bean, bird-like. I'll tell you if that is. Avian.
Avian.
Nice.
Avian. Yeah. So if you actually, there's a picture here that looks exactly like them. The ones that kind of look like birds. Here, let me see if I can rip it and put it on. Hold on. Oh, for some reason it doesn't allow me to
Somebody sure?
do that. Weird. Well, doesn't matter. If you just do avian, the one that comes like, oh, there it is. Now it appeared. Okay, let me see. Now I can maybe drop it here. Chat.
Thanks again, Danny, for spending this time with us, man. This is awesome.
Yeah, so
it really
they-
is.
We're having a great time here.
Yeah.
So.
You know, I feel like I learned a lot, but at the same time, I still have no idea what is going on with reality. It's much more beautiful, magnificent, confusing, you know, than you really know. So it's really insightful.
Yeah, really cool.
Mhm.
Danny,
Yeah. No,
before-
I would love to find out. Go ahead.
I was going to say, do you have any suggested, you may have mentioned it, but any suggested mantras or meditational exercises that you would suggest that we can maybe suggest to people that are listening or watching so that they can access some good reading materials and really take that first step of clearing their mind and just mindfulness and whatever you would find helpful?
So I definitely find Anapana to be super helpful. Here, I just sent you a picture here on the chat. I found Anapana to be super helpful because it calms the mind down. So just paying attention to the breath, the way it comes in and out the nose, even 5 or 6 breaths like that should do the trick. But really anything that makes you feel comfortable. The most important thing is the prep in terms of the environment. Make sure that everything looks clean. There's no trash even in the trash can. Like you did the work of like clearing the space. And then if you feel too overwhelmed or too stressed or whatever it is, make sure that you take that into account, and maybe not right now. But if you can bring that energy down, you have as many people as possible that can do that together, even if they're not diving in with you, that's always a good. And if nothing else, and you still feel some anxiety, yeah, even like playing like binaural beats or something like that kind of makes you feel good. There's nothing wrong with that. It can be a really good practice. These are the simple ones.
Yeah, thank you.
Subject of sound, Danny. I find this very interesting, and I also hear this very loud humming sound when I launch. And I know you had mentioned something about maybe Terrence McKenna. He believed this sound was maybe something that actually creates launch into this other dimension via vibration, perhaps. And it's very interesting because a lot of old religions and cultures, for example, the Vedas, I believe the universe was created via sound. The Om, I believe. And so I see that connection there, and I was just maybe wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the sound and what implications you think that has for DMT.
It's interesting. I don't hear the sound anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What is
And the sound that everybody are talking about, the hum, it's not a
Yeah.
hum, it's almost like a
I've heard a crack.
magical creature chanting. It's almost like and it just keeps going up like that, right? And then it kind of coats everything. So since they seem to have put my brain to some kind of a change where I started seeing the console all the time and all this extra content, I no longer hear the sound. I see the machinery that comes in the room that is not the console, it's a different machinery that comes in the room, and then it plays with your energetic centers almost like a piano. Like it would, not just in terms of what it activates and deactivates, but also in a particular order. So like deactivate here, activate down here, then it would shift, then it would put more thing here, and then it literally plays you. And it's almost, now it's like put in the code of where you're supposed to go. That's kind of like like it goes there, okay? And then there's this thing that comes around your head and it vibrates this very high pitch, and I can see it happening. And then it goes, you can barely hear it, and then you just go to whatever you were coded to go to. And I think that sound, my best assumption is that it is the thing that brings your frequency to a certain level where these things can start interacting with you, basically. So I don't know what that means for me, that I don't hear the sound anymore, but I think that's what it does. It vibrates your whole body in a particular frequency, so you can.
It's almost like you tuned with the tuning fork. It's almost like you finally tuned with the fork.
Yeah, they bring you to a certain level where these things can start even interacting with you. This is why when meditators do it for a long time, I think they naturally, slowly, gradually bring themselves to a certain level, and that's when they start seeing all this extra content. Because it's like all of a sudden you're on a level where you can both see them and they can see you. One thing I did want to say, I don't know if I fully said it. These avians, you said there might be the balance for the dark side. I think they're above it. So like at least on our levels, they are above all of that. They're not. There's nothing that they're balancing. They're just above that. It seems.
Huh.
Yeah.
Are you mapping these levels, Danny? Are you publishing essentially the DMT realm maps somewhere where folks can read about these different levels and what beings you might encounter there?
A lot of people ask me that. Sorry, go ahead, brother.
I was gonna say also, and have you tried to also write down the characters so that you could attempt to try and translate or form some sort of a language out of them, right? I'm curious to see if you've done any of that as well.
So the two separate questions. One is about the mapping. I see value in being able to kind of map it to some degree, but I don't know if I have enough confidence to say I know with a super high degree of certainty. So I don't want to put it out there as a truth because people would take it as that. It is helpful because I do manage to navigate to some degree with that, but I don't quite know how. I'm not saying they don't do that. I want to be super clear. Maybe they do. I'm just having a hard knowing the space so well. I'm having a hard time understanding how people are so certain sometimes about, these are my guides from the fifth dimension versus the fourth dimension versus like,
Absolutely.
how do you know that? I don't understand how they know that, right? So
I
then, yeah, so it's like it sounds so loaded to me, so I'm trying not to do that. A lot of people ask me to do like a video about, different beings and stuff. So I might do one and I will make a disclaimer that is just, hey, I'm just playing. Just, play this game. But yeah, there's some people, and again, not to say that I don't see them as negative people. I'm confused about how they think they know. What's his name? Matthias Stefan, right? Like this certainty of like, I remember to the beginning of time, I was like,
Yeah,
I
possibly
don't know how you're doing that. But maybe he does. I don't know.
Yeah.
And and the other video that really people ask me to do a lot is the one about that ultimate vision with the God woman and the different levels, and even Jesus Christ appeared, which was like very strange. And like they basically showed me the full map of the structure. And I don't mind doing that one because I feel like that was shown for a reason. Like it was it was like a diagram. They're like, here's how this works, how the VRs work and interact with one another, where they're located, and what humanity has to do now to kind of enter this next step of its own evolution. I think maybe that's a worthy video and this one I'm comfortable to do it with more certainty. And it's only because the vision that I was shown of that was very clear. It was very clear. It was drawn almost like a diagram.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be
So then the second question regarding the characters that you see in the code.
Oh, yes. So that one, I have to say that I do not share it's basically everybody and me, right? Like everybody are convinced that the way to go, including my fiance, she's like, we got to decode this. I'm like, something tells me that's just not the way to go. Also, I don't think we can. Like, there's so much there that unless you can record directly from your cortex and then feed it into some kind of a chat GPT, then you have a real shot. But there's no human alive that can take all of that information. The best you're gonna get is like very, very, very rudimentary approximations of what people see, and people are already doing that. I can send you some images that people created, but they're approximations. Forget even of the characters themselves. Forget about the order or the way that it appears. There's like millions of them, and they're moving all the time in different acts. I don't know how you even gonna begin to tackle that, right? But what I do think we should do, which is what I'm focused on now, is to see if we can probe the behavior of the code as a whole, which with powerful magnetic fields, with different materials, and if I can induce a change to the behavior of the code, and I can show that multiple individuals are seeing the same change, okay, now you have something. Now you can start mapping it onto something that reality is doing. I think that's the way to go. I would love to be proven wrong because it's literally everybody, including my fiance, I trust her opinion so deeply. She's very intuitive, very powerful, mind. But I just disagree. I just don't think it's the way to go. But I would love to be proven wrong. If somebody can start deciphering this, and like, I'll be the first one to clap because that would be
If
amazing. The what?
somebody can start drawing the characters and then say, are these the same characters you're seeing in the stream? Just grabbing a handful of them, 10,
Yeah.
20.
So we have, yeah, I can show you a few examples that I think the average of these is about what we're looking at. One of them is kind of like the carrot report, which again, because of my recent interaction with Gallimore, and when I heard how this information is being received when I'm saying it, I want to make it super clear. I'm not hanging anything on the carrot report being real or not real. I don't care. All
Yeah.
I'm telling you is that the characters are similar for sure. So even if somebody copied it from something else, I don't care. The characters are similar. So
Yeah.
this is these three things that I'm going to share with you now. They are the closest approximation if you average them out to what kinda the code looks like. So there's this. There's the original image that you see in the trailer. I'm going to send you all three of them together.
Curious to
This
see.
one. The what? Sorry? Say it again.
Curious to see if it's matching the characters that my wife sees on my skin.
Oh, okay, cool.
Interesting to see if if it's something along those lines.
Yeah. Okay, so let me see if I can see the third one. Should be here. Okay, I'm going to send out these two first. Um, I thought it was right there. Okay, never mind. I'm just sending these two for now. And one thing I will say that I did after speaking with people that say that they see the characters without the laser,
Mhm.
or without the molecule, because there's quite a few of them. A lot of people are telling me this.
Yep.
When I drill down to it with them, we discover that what they see is a slightly different code. What you see in the laser seems to be different. It's not, you can't really change it with your attention. It's much more robust and specific. But I did meet a few people. I'm looking for the last image. I did meet a few people that, for all intents and purposes, do report exactly what I know we see in the code. So what I'm sharing now, they're different. This is one of the latest drawings that somebody made on the bottom, and this is from the carrot report. And then what you see in the trailer is actually something that my fiance drew, which is this. It's on the left-hand side. Hold on, I'll set it right now.
That's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what my fiance drew on the left-hand side. This is a whole diagram of, oh, I think you have to open it.
We're looking at it right now as well, too.
Yeah, so on the left-hand side, these are the characters. And the whole thing is kind of like a diagram of how it appears with the laser.
Yep.
So if you average all these three things, you get like a close look, but it's none of these things. It's not Japanese, it's not Hebrew, even though it kind of looks like Hebrew a little bit here and there.
Sumerian or anything like that, right? It's because we were trying to map it to like Sumerian text type of thing.
I don't think it's a language that we have. No, I don't think.
Mm.
I think it's an alien language. Yeah.
And when you say alien, Danny, that's an interesting point there, right? Do you mean something that is just not native to, our, the whole extraterrestrial discussion, right? Is it in this dimension, this universe, just elsewhere in location, or is it something in a different frequency, a different vibration, a different dimension, right? That's
So UAPs, I would say they're on our level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think they're higher dimensional.
Okay.
They might be have some multidimensional protrusions that they interact with, but they seem to be a species that is more based on the same level that we are. Oh, that you might find this interesting. I forgot to tell you. So I did see regular people in the DMT space, like you and me, like straight up. So this and very coherently. I'm not saying like vaguely. Like I saw them, like I see you, and I think it means that some parallel worlds of humans found a way into hyperspace already. We just haven't done that yet.
Other travelers, or are they living?
No, and then there's an ecosystem. They work, like they do things. Like it's
up so that they can be viewed also.
Wow.
But this is very cool. Awesome.
Yeah, this is very detailed. This is impressive, actually.
Yeah, I can't wait to show my wife. So
this is by Ebony. She's the one that is also managing the Discord, and she
Gotcha.
recently, yeah.
Okay, Ebony, gotcha. We will make sure to give her credit too. So
That's fascinating.
man, this is great. How are we on time? So we are 12:21. I know we're probably past time. Are you still good on time, or should we wrap this
Yeah,
up
I
soon?
have another. Hold on, I'll tell you how much I have. Let me see a look at the schedule. I have I have another meeting in 2 and I have to take the dog. So yeah, we can do another 20 minutes.
Yeah, this is fascinating stuff. I am shocked on how well mapped the space is. It feels like Danny has a pretty solid understanding.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating too because what's the mode of communication, right? Is it verbal? Is it I think is it feeling? Is it intuition? Is it a combination of things? That's also a very
I,
very interesting thing.
it is definitely interesting. I think it's also very cool just to hear that he has similar experiences. What he calls the manager, right? Which is
Yeah, the management company. Yeah,
Aaron, you've been talking about those managers for so many years, brother.
because this has been happening
So
for
many years.
forever. Yeah, since for the last, since I started experimenting with this stuff.
Yeah.
And it proves to me that what we are seeing,
Mhm.
the fact that we are all experiencing these same things, this is not something like I didn't describe this thing to my wife, right? First, I just told her to look for it and asked her what it looked like. And she described the insect head, right? And she described the fact that it had these tentacle type things that come down and they inspect things in the room and it connects to your head and your face. And it is amazing that everyone is seeing these same things.
You said it to me for over 10 years now. And I remember doing DMT the first time with you, and I didn't see it. I just fractaled apart, and it was beautiful, and I loved it. And I did it many times after that and had the same experience. But I always wanted to see the manager.
I'll tell you how to see it too. What I saw usually is you have to have a big blank surface in order to really to see it in the air because you're going to be looking in the space between it. But it does conform to geometry in my experience. Like I used the blue projector screen before, just the blue, having the blue background and then having that be my background on a white wall so that when I did it, all of a sudden it was very clear to see the distortions were actually something. It wasn't just distortions, right? So then I was able to really, and once I saw it once, I could never unsee it, right? It comes in, it almost wisps into the room and then it comes.
You see space permanent objects that kind of float in the room. They're almost translucent.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. It's very
Yeah.
rare. Yeah, so most people when they report beings and all of that, they don't report that. I met maybe at most maybe 8 or 10 people all over the world that see what you're describing right now.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very rare. Yeah. I think it requires a certain stability in the space. Like
Yeah.
usually it is for the people that have been doing it for a few thousand times because it's I think your brain slowly builds these world models that up until that point is just a mesh. It's just like craziness. Then you stabilize in the space, you start seeing things more coherently. For a long time, Shane, I also didn't see any beings. I've seen some caricature looking things that I guess you can say maybe they're beings, but it wasn't like distinct. Like it wasn't like there's a presence there. That never happened to me. In ayahuasca it did, but not in DMT space. And only after really the frog guy when all of a sudden it just became like a completely direct communication. So it was like it just shifted. And I want to say something to the some of the criticism that is usually hurled towards these, like, well, like you exchanging notes, like you're telling each other about the being, so of course you would want to. I think there's a lot of there's too much made of this priming idea, right? It's like it's just not how priming works.
Yeah.
Just not, right? It's just like priming is a very general. I've had this discussion recently with a scientist, and she was saying, well, it's just there's too much priming here. I'm like, that's not how priming works. Like priming is like I'm influencing your body with a temperature, hot or cold, and I can reliably kind of produce negative or positive emotions towards a person, or I can tell you about some general meme space of like I can talk to you about witches or witchcraft, and then maybe you'll see some elements that are kind of like, but it's not gonna be like I described a super specific thing for you, and then you will now from now on only see that one super specific thing. It's just not how priming works, right? That is very important because when people think about well, you're convincing each other. No. No,
No.
there's certain things that you just know when they come in, that's like they're just there. Like there's a, and we got to trust each other to some degree. That it is slightly complicated by the fact that some people are a little hyperbolic and they like to lean into these. And but you, if you practice, you can kind of, you know, kind of weave your way through these people, because it's like there are the people that they just listen to you and you say something and they just go, yeah, 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 and then they just, you know, just
Yep.
literally repeat back to you what you just said, right? But that's, I think it's relatively discernible who is that person and who's the person who's just like would actually interact in a real way, and then you would tell them something and sometimes they would say no, no, it was something like, you know, there's an honest attempt to understand the thing, and that's a different kind of communication that
Yeah,
also
it
needs to be taken into account.
comes down to bullshit detection, right? So you can tell sometimes if somebody is bullshitting you, or I mean, yeah, pardon my French, but there are certain people, I hear their DMT stories, and some of these things I listen to them and I'm like, I just don't know if I believe this guy. You know what I mean? Because it's like it's too, like too. I don't know. It sounds scripted. It does sound like he's repeating some story from something, and it sounds like it's. I mean, I don't. There are, because of the fact that there's this whole gesture that you're mentioning, where there's this layer of randomness that can be create any true experience, that is, it can throw anything at you. I guess I should probably reevaluate those feelings and not be so quick to judge somebody's experience, because you know, because sometimes they do sound so off the wall, but then some of mine have been really off the wall
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
You know,
And sometimes not everybody are great orators, or they're not. They just, it's not even coming from a bad place. That's why I
yeah,
said confabulation and not lying, because
yeah,
sometimes you don't even notice, but like you would just skew one fact here, one fact, just because you want to belong or you want to feel like there's a good rapport, right? So you would say something that is not exactly what it was, but you would kind of say. So there's a there's a there's a gradation here, right? So it's not even coming out of a place of a judgment. I'm just saying that if we are trying to map the space honestly, yeah, we
yeah,
would have to focus on the people that are very like super
Yeah.
rigorous about what they're reporting, and they're trying really hard to stay away within the bounds of what they actually experienced. It's not
yeah.
always that easy to do.
Don't make shit up. You know,
Yeah.
It's hard to
It's all the time. It's like, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And sometimes even people report, I'm sure that people sometimes would report a real thing, but because they are the kind of person that tends to just say all kinds of shit, now you can't really know, like you can't trust what they're saying. It's like, and they don't realize that they just, yeah, they just shoot themselves in the foot, because it's like, I can't trust what you're saying ever, because you're
yeah.
saying all this shit that probably didn't happen, and now when that thing, one thing you're reporting that did happen, I don't know, because that's the way you talk. It's like, you got to be a little bit more on it to be able to be trusted.
yeah. Well, thankfully, you're talking to some pretty straightforward guys here. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. No, I definitely feel
don't
that.
elaborate. I don't know.
I don't know about me. I'm still trying to figure myself out,
No,
honestly.
I
But
can't speak for Shane.
Oh, we didn't say we know ourselves out. We figured ourselves out.
All
Just
similar. We all like to travel. We all have some pretty cool traits that make us. I think we should all hang out sometime for real sometime, man. Next time, if we're
absolutely.
SoCal, it'd be awesome to meet up with you at some point and maybe do some research. You know what I mean? It would be really cool.
Yeah.
So
One thing I did want to say to Shane, there is a possibility. I'm now seeing this more and more. There are certain people that I think they're like on a different channel of just trajectory of existence. So they would be more on the what you would call a spiritual channel. And it is different. So there's like a there's a different trajectory there. The more technological one is the one that more focuses on the details, and there's a different unfoldment probably in the even in the timeline that they're going to experience. The people that you, the ones that are honestly talking about it and experiencing it, that more talking about like the awakening and all of that stuff, they seem to have, even if they interact with some of the stuff that we're talking about, they have a whole other perception of it, and I think it's not a coincidence. I don't think they're confused or anything like this. I think they are literally receiving information in a different way and from a different part of the channel from the source. And something tells me that if you are not seeing beings, no matter how much you do it, it's possible that you're more on that channel and you're more appropriating yourself from that perspective. It's a much more, we're here together, we're combining into one, that kind of thing.
That is my experience every time.
Yes.
I break down to combine into one with everybody else, and it just becomes so horribly wonderful and so wonderfully horrible. I mean, it's all just the same thing. It just doesn't matter. Like, but that's great.
Yeah.
Like, talk about a load off.
Like the beginning of before existence or something, almost like you're in a melting pot. Shane, that's been my experience every time as well. It's yeah, it is like a load off. It's relieving.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Cool.
Danny, I had just one quick question for you. One last topic, hopefully we have time for. One thing I find very interesting is the topic of like near-death experiences and also birth. My first DMT experience, I went to this this plane, right, that Shane described, where you're kind of broken down, you're one with everything, like a melting pot, and then I felt like I was just spit back into my body.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I'm back in my body, and I look down at my hands, and I felt like my hands were so foreign to me, but it also felt vaguely familiar, like this is what my birth felt like when I was like born or something. And I go, man, maybe there's some truth to this, that when you're born, perhaps your body releases DMT, or maybe even when you die. I'd heard this. I haven't done much research on the scientific aspect to see if that's true, but it almost felt like there was some truth to that. And so I was very curious if you had any thoughts on near-death experiences, birth, and the relationship to the molecule.
So if the question is, does DMT responsible for carrying the soul in and out of bodies? I think that at this point it's pretty clear that DMT does a lot more than that. I think it buffers experience in general, to some degree supported by research that John Dean did a few years ago, where he discovered that at least in rats or mice, I never remember which one he did the experiment with, he discovered that they have comparable amounts of DMT in their intracranial liquid during waking hours, comparable amounts to dopamine and serotonin. So actually more than serotonin. So like there's serotonin, DMT, dopamine. So that's a lot. So it's not just when you're born, when you sleep, or when you die, it's all the time. Which means that if that's the case for us as well, and they're pretty close to us as far as brain chemistry, then I think the DMT is just buffering experience in general. That's what it does. And then as far as like NDEs and all that stuff, I don't have a lot of experience of it, obviously, and I've never experienced what people would call an out of body experience. And I always ask people who tell me about astral projection and all that stuff, and I ask like, what would be the difference between that and being launched from your body on DMT? And the ones that did do both, they said, no, it's very similar. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess I've had it on DMT, but never like alone. I do have a good friend who a couple of years ago had a very big problem. He had to go through an open heart surgery, and he's pretty young, but it was it was something he was expecting because it was a genetic condition. And then he's as secular as they come. Irish guy, very like, everything is very straightforward. And he told me like, and he changed after that. He said, bro, oh my God, like I've experienced, like I was outside my body. I visited my mom in Ireland. I came back. I don't know what to tell you. Like I now know there's a beyond. Like I just know. And so that's all I can say from that one anecdote from a really good friend. But I do know that there's some research now that is dealing with these things. I'm just not very well versed in it.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I mean, I had a similar experience with being, for me, it was DMT induced, where I could see my own body. I could also see my wife in the next room laying down.
Really?
Which was very interesting.
Oh,
Yeah.
I never had that. That's crazy.
As loud as I could to get to her, and she couldn't hear me, but I could see her clearly. Right. And then I felt like I was tumbling, and then I looked up and I saw like it was like a Native American woman. And this is a crazy story, staring down at me. There was like the sun behind her. And then all of a sudden I was like put back into my body. And that was with DMT with NMT in it. It was based off of an Acacia confusa. So
What is NMT? I don't even know. What is?
So NMT is, there's, when you have DMT, if it's made from Acacia confusa versus Mimosa hostilis, Acacia confusa contains an additional chemical in there.
Oh, I don't even know if I ever tried that. Or maybe I haven't, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, so this additional, it has a different experience. Like it was the very first way I tried it. And it did have some different experiences that were definitely different than the DMT that's mostly made today. But
do you have access to the source of that?
Yeah, I do. I can offline after this. I can tell you exactly how to do all
Perfect.
that.
Yeah. No, I've never tried it.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Yeah, it's called ACRB. It's a Kish confusa, and it contains an NMT inside of it as well.
Which is the 5-MeO DMT is.
Different than 5-MeO,
Okay.
yeah. So NMT it's DMT and NMT,
Oh wow.
the two chemicals together.
So is that what they also use in Changa or no?
You can make it with changa. So I know changa. You can see, like you can make a tea with. I know way too much about this stuff. So
There's a lot of ways.
well, I gotta be careful when I say all this stuff. But yeah,
No, I think as long as you say it as just educational, you can say whatever.
Exactly.
Point in case is that Joe Rogan sometimes tells people on air, "Hey, you want to smoke DMT?"
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It's like
No.
yeah.
No, yeah, this is just educational.
Right.
But yeah, I can send you some information. I'll shoot you some information
Please.
that I read
That'd
about.
be great.
Just from I've only read about it, and I'll tell you about it.
I've heard about it.
Yeah, exactly. Someone I met. Yeah.
Right.
So, anyways, I think this is probably a good time to try and wrap this up because I think we've been on here. We've taken a lot of your time, but Danny, you are an amazing guy. We appreciate you being on this. This has been the whole experience has been great. I've learned a lot, and if we are in the SoCal area, maybe we can hit you up and we can do some
Please
research.
let me know.
Danny,
Yeah.
Danny, do you want to tell people where they can find you? Maybe if Aaron's gonna put this on his TikTok, maybe if you have anything coming up.
The two main things I'm promoting are my YouTube channel and the website, which is Dango Thoughts. DANGO Thoughts is the YouTube channel, and codeofreality.com is the website. If you want to follow more things, then it will be Danny Goler on TikTok and Instagram, and Goler Danny on X.
Awesome. And I'll put those down there for you in text as well. Just
Appreciate it.
so awesome, man. This has been awesome, Danny. I super appreciate you, and this is great. So
Super grateful, Danny. Thank you so much for your wealth of knowledge.
It was wonderful.
Been a fantastic
Thank you,
conversation.
man.
Seriously.
Be in touch.
thanks, Shane, for joining in too,
Thanks, brother. It's good seeing you,
Bye,
Danny. It's
Shane.
nice meeting you. Brent, it's good seeing you.
guys.
All right, guys.
I love you guys.
Take care.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Love you.
Shit's getting real.